Did you know that in the first pages of the Bible, the deepest secrets of humanity are hidden? Genesis is not just ancient history. It is the spiritual DNA of everything that exists. Here are born the promises that God will fulfill until the end of times. From the first, let there be light, to the prophecies of Jacob about the 12 tribes. Each verse connects with the eternal plan of salvation. In this book, you will discover why Adam prefigures Christ, why the flood announces the final judgment, and how Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob forged the destiny of Israel. Prepare yourself to see Genesis like never before, not just as the beginning of history, but as the key that opens all the scripture. The future of humanity began here, in these pages that will change your perspective forever. Everything began in the absolute void. The first chapter of Genesis tells us that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. It was a world without form, submerged in total darkness. But God had a perfect plan. The first day arrived with power. According to Genesis 1:35, God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning one day. The first word of God brought order to chaos. It was not gradual nor slow. It was instantaneous and powerful. The second day organized the spaces, as says Genesis 1:16-18. Then God said, "And let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. God divided the waters and created the sky that we see. In the third day, the dry land appeared. Genesis 1:9-13 relates, "God also said, Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. After God said, Now let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. The earth was filled with green immediately. The fourth day brought the celestial lights. Genesis 1:14-19 says, And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, for seasons, for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, the sun, the moon, and the stars took their places. The fifth day was filled with life. According to Genesis 1:20-23, God said, Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. The oceans and the sky were filled with creatures. The sixth day was special. Genesis 1:24-31 tells us that God created the land animals and then the man. Then God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. The man was different from everything else. After creating the universe, God dedicated himself to something special. The chapter 2 of Genesis tells us that Jehovah God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. This was not just any act of creation. God took common earth and gave him his own breath. It was personal and intimate. For this special man, God prepared a unique place. Genesis 2:8-9 says, "And Jehovah God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground made Jehovah God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil." It was a perfect garden designed specifically for man. The place had crystalline rivers. Genesis 2:10-14 describes, "And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted, and became into 4 heads. The name of the first is Pison. That is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx stone. The name of the second river is Gihon. The same is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. And the name of the third river is Hiddekel. That is it which goeth toward the east of Assyria, and the fourth river is Euphrates." Why? It was a place of abundance and beauty. The man had an important task. According to Genesis 2:15, "And Jehovah God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it." It was not just to live comfortably, but to work and care for the creation. It was a joyful work, without painful effort, but God saw that something was missing, as relates Genesis 2:18-20. "And Jehovah God said, It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an help meet for him. And out of the ground Jehovah God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. And Adam gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found an help meet for him." Then came the most beautiful moment. Genesis 2:21-25 says, "And Jehovah God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which Jehovah God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed." It was the perfect couple in the perfect place. In paradise there was only one rule. Genesis 2:16-17 tells us that Jehovah God commanded the man, saying, "Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." It was simple and clear. A single prohibition in the middle of all freedom. But someone arrived to change everything. The chapter 3 introduces us to the serpent, who was more subtle than any beast of the field which Jehovah God had made. This serpent approached the woman with a dangerous question. "Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden?" The question sowed doubt about what God had really said. The woman answered correctly at the beginning. According to Genesis 3:2, the woman said unto the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die." She knew the divine command, but she had already added something that God had not said. The conversation continued in a deceptive way, according to Genesis 3:4-5. "And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." The first lie of history had just been told. It was a direct contradiction to the word of God. The temptation worked. Genesis 3:6 relates the fatal moment. "And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat." Sin entered the world through disobedience. Adam was with her and also participated consciously. The consequences arrived immediately. As says Genesis 3:7-8, "And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together, and made themselves aprons. And they heard the voice of Jehovah God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Jehovah God amongst the trees of the garden." For the first time, they felt shame and fear. God sought them with a question full of pain. Genesis 3:9-11 relates, "And Jehovah God called unto Adam and said unto him, Where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself. And he said, Who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? And the man said, The woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. And Jehovah God said unto the woman, What is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat." The excuses and mutual blame began. The judgment arrived for everyone. Genesis 3:14 tells us the curses to the serpent, to the woman, and to the man. But in the middle of the judgment, God gave the first promise of salvation in Genesis 3:15. "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel." It was the first prophecy about the Savior that would come. Outside of Eden, Adam and Eve had children. The chapter 4 tells us that Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from Jehovah. After she bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. Two brothers with different trades, but equally honorable. The two brothers had different jobs, but both worshipped God. Genesis 4:3-4 says, "And in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto Jehovah, and Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And Jehovah had respect unto Abel and to his offering. Both offered of their works. But there was an important difference. But something was wrong with Cain's offering, as continues the verse 5. But unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. God rejected his offering, and Cain was filled with anger. It was not only the rejection of the offering, but the attitude of the heart. God spoke directly to Cain, according to Genesis 4:6-7. And Jehovah said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth, and why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. It was a clear warning about the danger of sin and an opportunity to repent. But Cain did not listen to the warning. The verse 8 relates the tragedy. And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother, and slew him. The first murder of history had occurred. Sin had multiplied from disobedience to homicide. God confronted Cain immediately. Genesis 4:9-12 tells us, "And Jehovah said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth." The punishment terrified Cain, as says Genesis 4:13-16. "And Cain said unto Jehovah, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. And Jehovah said unto him, Then therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And Jehovah set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. And Cain went out from the presence of Jehovah, and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. After the death of Abel, Adam and Eve had another son. Genesis 4:25 tells us, And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God, said she, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel whom Cain slew. Seth would be important for the future of humanity. His name means substitute because he replaced Abel in the plan of God. With Seth began something beautiful. Genesis 4:26 says, And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of Jehovah. It was the beginning of organized worship to God. The descendants of Seth would be known as the sons of God. The chapter 5 presents the first complete genealogy. It begins saying, This is the book of the generations of Adam, in the day that God created man. In the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. This genealogy connects all humanity with the first man. The list of generations is impressive for the ages. Genesis 5:3-5 says that Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness after his image, and called his name Seth. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. It was an era where human life extended for centuries. Seth continued the godly line. According to Genesis 5:6-8, Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos. And Seth lived after he begat Enos 807 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. Each generation lived almost 1,000 years. Among all these names, one is special. Genesis 5:21-24 speaks of Enoch. Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Enoch. God took him alive to heaven. Methuselah became the man who lived the longest. Genesis 5:25-7 says, Methuselah lived 187 years, and begat Lamech. And Methuselah lived after he begat Lamech 782 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. Almost 1,000 years of life. The genealogy ended with someone important. Genesis 5:28-32 tells us, Lamech lived 182 years and begat a son, and he called his name Noah, saying, "This same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which Jehovah hath cursed." And Lamech lived after he begat Noah 595 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Noah would be key for the future of humanity. The world changed drastically. The chapter 6 begins with a strange situation. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. The descendants of Seth mixed with the descendants of Cain in an incorrect way. From this union, special beings were born. Genesis 6:4 explains, "There were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. The Nephilim, powerful giants, dominated the earth. They were famous for their strength and violence. The situation worsened rapidly, as says Genesis 6:5. And Jehovah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." Humanity had completely corrupted itself. There was no goodness in their hearts. The pain of God was deep, Genesis 6:6 tells us. "And it repented Jehovah that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart." It was not that God had made a mistake, but that it grieved him to see what had happened with his creation. The decision of God was radical. Genesis 6:7 relates, "And Jehovah said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them." The judgment would be universal and complete, but there was an exception. The verse 8 tells us, "But Noah found grace in the eyes of Jehovah." In the middle of all the wickedness, a man remained faithful to God. He was just perfect in his generations and walked with God. As says Genesis 6:9, God revealed his plan to Noah, according to Genesis 6:13. God said unto Noah, "The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth." It was a final and irrevocable sentence. God gave specific instructions to Noah, according to Genesis 6:14-16. "Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits. The breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof with lower. Second and third stories shalt thou make it." It was a huge vessel the size of a modern ship. The animals also had to be saved. Genesis 7:2-3 says, "Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female, of fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth." It was a gigantic floating zoo. Noah obeyed completely. Genesis 7:5 tells us, And Noah did according unto all that Jehovah commanded him." He did not question or doubt. He simply obeyed every detail of the divine instructions. The moment of judgment arrived. Genesis 7:11 relates, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month. The same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. The water came from above and below simultaneously. The water covered everything, as says Genesis 7:19-20. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. Not even the highest mountains escaped the flood. The judgment was total. Genesis 7:21-23 says, "And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. And every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven. And they were destroyed from the earth, and Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark." After months in the ark, God remembered Noah. Genesis 8:1-3 says, "And God remembered Noah, and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained, and the waters returned from off the earth continually." Finally, the moment to leave arrived. Genesis 8:18-19 tells us, "And Noah went forth, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him, every beast, every creeping thing, and every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth, after their kinds went forth out of the ark." It was like a new beginning for the world. The first thing Noah did was to worship. Genesis 8:20-21 tells us, "And Noah builded an altar unto Jehovah, and took of every clean beast, and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And Jehovah smelled a sweet savor. And Jehovah said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done." It was pure gratitude after the salvation. God blessed Noah and his family. According to Genesis 9:1-2, God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, "And be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered." And it was a new beginning with new rules. God established human government. Genesis 9:5-6 says, "And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man. At the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man." It was the institution of justice. God made a solemn promise according to Genesis 9:11. "And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth." And God said, "This is the token of the covenant, which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth." The rainbow became the eternal reminder of the divine promise. The sons of Noah repopulated the earth. Genesis 10:1 says, "Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. From these three men came all the nations that we know." The chapter 10 gives us the table of the nations. Japheth extended toward the north and west, Ham toward Africa and Canaan, and Shem toward the Middle East, as says Genesis 10:32. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations in their nations. And by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. Humanity began again, but this time with the knowledge of the justice of God. In a prosperous city called Ur of the Chaldees lived a man who would change history forever. His name was Abraham, and he had a comfortable life next to his father Terah, his wife Sarai, and his nephew Lot. But Sarai had a deep pain. She could not have children. The chapter 11 of Genesis tells us that Sarai was barren, and she had no child. In those times, not having descendants was considered a terrible curse. It was then when God appeared in the life of Abraham. The chapter 12 begins with words that would change everything. But Jehovah had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. It was a command that required blind faith. God asked him to leave everything known for something completely uncertain. There were no maps or guarantees. But together with the command came an extraordinary promise. Genesis 12:2-3 continues, And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. It was a promise that seemed impossible for a man of 75 years with a barren wife. The response of Abraham was immediate and radical. Genesis 12:4-5 tells us, So Abram departed as Jehovah had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. He did not doubt or negotiate. He simply obeyed the divine voice. Upon arriving in Canaan, Abraham traveled the land that would be his. Genesis 12:6-7 relates, And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Moreh. And the Canaanite was then in the land. And Jehovah appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto Jehovah, who appeared unto him. It was the first confirmation that he had arrived at the correct place. The land was already inhabited, but God promised to give it to him. Abraham continued his journey through the promised land, as says Genesis 12:8-9. And he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Hai on the east. And there he builded an altar unto Jehovah, and called upon the name of Jehovah. And Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. Every place where he stopped, he worshipped God. He was a man of faith who recognized who had brought him until there. But soon problems arrived. A terrible famine struck the land, and Abraham had to make difficult decisions, as tells us Genesis 12. And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there. For the famine was grievous in the land. It was his first great test in the promised land, in Egypt. Abraham committed his first grave error, worried about his safety. He told Sarai to say that she was his sister. Genesis 12:13 relates his words, And it came to pass when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, Behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me. But they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. It was a half-truth that would bring complications. The plan went out as Abraham expected, but also brought unexpected consequences. Genesis 12:14-17 tells us, And it came to pass that when Abram was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman that she was very fair. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake. And he had sheep and oxen, and he asses and men servants and maidservants and she-asses and camels. Abraham became rich, but at the cost of his wife. God intervened to protect his plan. Genesis 12:17 relates, "And Jehovah plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, 'What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why saidst thou, she is my sister? So I might have taken her to me to wife. Now therefore behold thy wife. Take her and go thy way.' And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning Abram, and they sent him away and his wife and all that he had. Back in Canaan, Abraham had prospered much. The chapter 13 begins saying, "And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver and in gold." The riches of Egypt had come with him, but also brought new problems. The success brought family conflicts. Genesis 13:5-7 explains, "And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together. For their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land." The prosperity had created tension between uncle and nephew. Abraham took the initiative to resolve the conflict. With wisdom and generosity, he proposed to Lot a solution. Genesis 13:8-9 registers his words. "And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left." Chiki, it was a notable gesture of humility from the elder towards the younger. The decision of Lot revealed his character. Genesis 13:10-12 tells us, "And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before Jehovah destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of Jehovah, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Lot chose with the eyes, looking for the best land for him. After the separation, God consoled Abraham with a renewed promise. Genesis 13:14-17 relates, "And Jehovah said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art northward and southward and eastward and westward, for all the land which thou seest. To thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee." Abraham established himself in Hebron, but soon alarming news would arrive. The chapter 14 begins relating a war between kings, and it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zor. It was an international conflict that would involve people close to Abraham. The war had begun by a rebellion. Genesis 14:4-5 explains, 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. And in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzims in Ham, and the Emims in Shaveh Kiriathaim. The kings of the east came to subdue the rebels with crushing force. The decisive battle was devastating for the cities of the plain. Genesis 14:11 relates, "And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew. For he dwelt in the plain of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram. Hearing Abraham that his relative was a prisoner, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. Abraham did not doubt in risking everything to rescue his nephew. The strategy of Abraham was brilliant. Genesis 14:15-16 describes the victory, and he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people, with only 318 trained men. He defeated the 4 kings that had conquered the whole region. On the return journey, something extraordinary occurred. Genesis 14:18-20 tells us, "And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him, and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And he gave him tithes of all." Melchizedek was a mysterious king-priest who worshipped the same God as Abraham. After these victories, Abraham needed security about the promises of God. The chapter 15 begins with words of comfort. After these things, the word of Jehovah came unto Abram in a vision, saying, "Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward." God knew that Abraham had doubts and fears after all that had occurred, but Abraham expressed his deepest worry, as relates Genesis 15:2-3, "And Abram said, Jehovah God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir." At 85 years old, without children, the promise seemed impossible. God responded with a specific and visual promise. Genesis 15:4-5 continues, "And behold, the word of Jehovah came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, I'll look now toward heaven and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. It was a powerful image in the night sky of the desert. The response of Abraham marked a crucial moment in history. Genesis 15:6 says simply, And he believed in Jehovah, and he counted it to him for righteousness. This was the first time in history that someone was declared just by faith, not by works. It was the foundation of all future salvation. But Abraham had another worry. Genesis 15:7-8 relates, And he said unto him, I am Jehovah that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Jehovah God, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? Abraham believed in the promise of descendants, but wanted security about the land. God established a formal covenant using the customs of the era. Genesis 15:9-11 describes the preparations. And he said unto him, Tikyak me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle-dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another. But the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. When night arrived, something supernatural occurred. Genesis 15:12-16 relates, "And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, To know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full." The covenant was sealed in an extraordinary way. Genesis 15:17 concludes, "And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. In the same day Jehovah made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaims and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Jebusites." Only God passed between the pieces, assuming all the responsibility of the covenant. 10 years passed since Abraham had arrived in Canaan, and Sarai continued without having children. The patience was running out, and a human idea arose to accelerate the divine plan. The chapter 16 begins with the proposal of Sarai. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold now, Jehovah hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. The practice was common in those times, but it was not the original plan of God. Genesis 16:4 continues, "And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes." The plan worked biologically, but brought immediate relational problems. The conflicts arose rapidly. Genesis 16:5-6 relates, "And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom, and when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Jehovah judge between me and thee. But Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. The tension was unbearable for all the involved parties. Hagar fled to the desert. But God did not abandon her. Genesis 16:7-10 tells us the encounter. And the angel of Jehovah found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. And he said, How Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of Jehovah said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of Jehovah said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. The angel gave her a specific promise about her son. Genesis 16:11 continues, And the angel of Jehovah said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because Jehovah hath heard thy affliction, and he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Ishmael would be the father of a great nation, but a nation in conflict. Hagar returned with a new perspective about God. Genesis 16:13 relates, "And she called the name of Jehovah that spake unto her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seethed me? Wherefore the well was called Beer Lahairoi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered." It was the first time that someone gave a name to God based on a personal experience. Ishmael was born when Abraham was 86 years old. Genesis 16:15 concludes, "And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram." Abraham now had a son, but it was not the son of the promise. 13 years passed in silence. Ishmael grew up, and perhaps Abraham thought that he was the fulfillment of the promise. But when Abraham was 99 years old, God appeared again. The chapter 17 begins. "And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, Jehovah appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me and be thou perfect." God renewed and expanded the previous covenant. Genesis 17:2-6 continues, "And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly." And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made thee, and I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee." The change of name was significant. Abram meant exalted father, but Abraham meant father of multitudes. It was a declaration of faith that required that Abraham believed what he still did not see. Together with this came the promise of the land. Genesis 17:8 says, "And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God." But this covenant had a physical sign. Genesis 17:9-11 explains, "And God said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant which ye shall keep, between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised, and ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you." Sarai also received a new name and a specific promise. Genesis 17:15-16 relates, "And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be, and I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her." Shaktiku, Sarah meant princess, and she would be the mother of the promised son. The reaction of Abraham was of initial disbelief. Genesis 17:17-18 tells us, "Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? And Abraham said unto God, Jacob, that Ishmael might live before thee." Abraham loved Ishmael and wanted him to be the heir. Abraham obeyed immediately. Genesis 17:23-27 concludes, "And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the selfsame day as God had said unto him. And Abraham was 90 years old, and 9 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old, when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, a hot day. Abraham was sitting at the entrance of his tent when he saw 3 visitors approaching. The chapter 18 begins. And Jehovah appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground. Abraham showed extraordinary hospitality. Genesis 18:3-5 relates, and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, and I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on, for therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, So do, as thou hast said. During the meal, the visitors made a surprising promise. Genesis 18:9-10 relates, And they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. God revealed his plan of judgment. Genesis 18:21 says, And Jehovah said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now, and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me. And if not, I will know. Abraham then did something extraordinary. He interceded for the sinful cities. Genesis 18:23 registers, And Abraham drew near and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy, and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? Abraham continued negotiating, gradually lowering the number until reaching 10 righteous. Genesis 18:32-33 concludes, And he said, O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet, but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. Stina and Jehovah went his way, as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. That same afternoon, 2 angels arrived in Sodom, where Lot lived. The wickedness of the city was revealed rapidly, and the angels urged Lot to flee. The judgment fell immediately. Genesis 19:24 describes the destruction. Then Jehovah rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone, and fire from Jehovah out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. Abraham was witness of the judgment from afar. Genesis 19:27-28 tells us, And Abraham gate up early in the morning to the place where he stood before Jehovah, and he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. His intercession had saved Lot, but could not save the cities. God fulfilled his promise at the appointed time. The chapter 21 begins with the joy of the fulfillment. And Jehovah visited Sarah as he had said, and Jehovah did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. Isaac, the son of the promise, finally had been born. The joy of Sarah was complete. Genesis 21:6-7 relates, And Sarah said, God hath made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. And she said, Who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age. The laughter of disbelief had become laughter of joy. But soon tensions arose in the home. Genesis 21:8-9 describes the problem. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham mocking. Ishmael, now an adolescent, mocked the small Isaac. Sarah took a drastic decision. Genesis 21:10 registers. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. It was a request that hurt Abraham deeply. Abraham obeyed with pain. Genesis 21:14 says, And then Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. 9 years later, when Isaac had grown up, the greatest test of Abraham arrived. The chapter 22 begins with words that froze the heart. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. The command was unthinkable. Isaac was the son of the promise, the only means by which all the promises of God would be fulfilled. Sacrificing him seemed to contradict everything that God had promised. But Abraham did not argue or question. The obedience of Abraham was immediate. Genesis 22:3 relates, And Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place of which God had told him. There was no delay or excuses. The journey lasted 3 days, but Abraham did not change his opinion. Genesis 22:4-5 says, Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. Abraham believed that both would return. Isaac made an innocent question. Genesis 22:7-8 relates, And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. They arrived at the indicated place. Genesis 22:9-10 describes, And they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. Abraham was willing to obey completely. In the last moment, God intervened. Genesis 22:11 relates, And the angel of Jehovah called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. God provided the sacrifice. Genesis 22:13-14 continues, And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh. As it is said to this day, in the mount of Jehovah it shall be seen. The angel spoke a second time with a renewed promise. Genesis 22:15-18 concludes, "And the angel of Jehovah called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time, and said, By myself have I sworn, saith Jehovah, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice." Sarah died at 127 years in Hebron. Abraham bought the cave of Machpelah as a place of burial, after he sought a wife for Isaac, finding Rebekah. Abraham married Keturah and had more children, but gave all his inheritance to Isaac. He died at 175 years, being buried by Isaac and Ishmael together in the cave of Machpelah. Rebekah had waited 20 years to conceive. Isaac prayed fervently to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord answered his prayer after so much time of waiting. But the pregnancy brought an internal struggle that worried her deeply. The children pushed each other inside her womb with such force that she felt that something extraordinary was happening. The battle inside her matrix was so intense that it led her to ask what that strife meant. Seeking divine answers, Rebekah consulted the Lord, who revealed to her the prophetic destiny of her children in Genesis 25:23. "Two nations are in thy womb, and two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger." This revelation showed that the conflict between the children was not casual, but part of the divine plan that would extend through the generations. When the moment of birth arrived, first came a child completely hairy and reddish like a hairy garment. They called him Esau, which means hairy. Immediately after came his brother, grabbing firmly the heel of Esau with his small hand, as if trying to stop him or reclaim his place. For that, they called him Jacob, which means he who takes by the heel or supplanter. Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born, an advanced age that made this blessing even more precious after so many years of sterility. The children grew up being completely different in character and preferences. Esau became a skilled hunter, a man of the field who loved the life in the open air and the adventure of the hunt. Jacob, on the contrary, was quiet and reflective. He preferred to stay in the tents, dedicating himself to more sedentary activities. Isaac loved Esau especially because he enjoyed eating of his hunt and admired his skills as a hunter. Rebekah, however, loved Jacob more, perhaps because she saw in him more contemplative characteristics. This division of affections in the family would plant the seeds of future conflicts that would mark deeply the destiny of both brothers. One day, Jacob was cooking a stew of red lentils when Esau returned from the field. Completely exhausted and hungry after a long day of fruitless hunting, the penetrating aroma of the red stew awakened his appetite in a desperate way, and his hunger was such that he felt that he was fading. Without thinking twice or measuring the consequences, Esau asked his brother urgently to give him to eat of that red stew that he craved so much, because he was fainting from exhaustion and the lack of food. Jacob, always astute and calculating, saw immediately a unique opportunity in the desperation of his brother and answered him with a proposal that would change the course of their lives. "Sell me this day thy birthright." The birthright was not simply an honorific family position. It represented a double portion of the paternal inheritance, the spiritual and temporal leadership of the family, and more importantly, the continuation of the sacred promises that God had made to Abraham. It was the right of the firstborn to be the principal heir and the patriarch of future generations. Esau, completely dominated by his immediate hunger, and without valuing the eternal implications of his decision, answered with contempt according to Genesis 25:32, "Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me?" His answer revealed a completely earthly mentality, focused solely on the needs of the present moment, without considering the future blessings. Jacob, knowing well the impulsive character of his brother, insisted that he swear to make the exchange legally binding, and Esau swore without excitement, selling thus his precious right of firstborn for a simple plate of lentils. Genesis 25:34 summarizes the frivolous attitude of Esau with these revealing words. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. In an impulsive moment of immediate satisfaction, Esau changed irreversibly his spiritual and material future for a temporal and passing satisfaction, showing how little he valued the spiritual things and the divine promises that had been the foundation of his family. A severe famine came upon the land, different from the first famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham decades before. The scarcity was such that Isaac thought seriously about going down to Egypt to seek sustenance, following the same path that his father had taken in similar circumstances. But the Lord appeared to him directly and said to him clearly in Genesis 26:2-3, "Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father." God renewed his sacred promises with Isaac, confirming and ratifying the eternal covenant made with Abraham. He promised to multiply his descendants like the stars of heaven and give him all those lands in perpetual possession. Besides, he assured him that in his seed all the nations of the earth would be blessed, because Abraham had obeyed perfectly the voice of God, keeping his precepts, commandments, statutes, and laws. Isaac established himself in Gerar, territory of the Philistines, but unfortunately committed exactly the same error that his father Abraham had committed years before in similar circumstances. When the men of the place asked curiously for Rebekah, Isaac lied, deliberately saying that she was his sister, because he feared deeply that they would kill him because of her, since she was fair to look upon and could awaken the greed of the men of the place. The king Abimelech discovered the lie when casually he saw through a window Isaac caressing tenderly Rebekah in a way that did not correspond to the relationship between siblings. He called him immediately and claimed with firmness, "How saidst thou? She is my sister." Isaac answered him honestly, "Because I said, lest I die for her." Abimelech rebuked him severely for having put in danger all the people with his deception, but also protected generously the couple, ordering publicly that no one touch them under penalty of death. Isaac sowed diligently in that land during the time of famine and harvested miraculously 100-fold, because the Lord blessed him abundantly despite the adverse circumstances. He enriched himself progressively until becoming very powerful, so much that the Philistines began to have envy of him for his evident prosperity. In their resentment, they covered maliciously all the wells that the servants of Abraham had dug in previous times, filling them completely with earth to inutilize them. Finally, the same Abimelech asked him directly that he go from his territory, telling him clearly, "Go from us, for thou art much mightier than we." Isaac aged considerably, and his eyes darkened progressively until remaining almost completely blind, unable to distinguish clearly the persons, feeling that his death approached inexorably and desiring to fulfill his paternal obligations. He called Esau, his eldest and favorite son, and said to him solemnly, according to Genesis 27:1-4, "Behold now, I am old, I know not the day of my death. Now therefore take, I pray thee, thy weapons, thy quiver and thy bow, and go out to the field, and take me some venison, and make me savory meat, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, that my soul may bless thee before I die." Rebekah listened attentively to all the conversation from a position where she could not be seen, and quickly devised an elaborate plan to intercept the blessing destined for Esau. She called urgently Jacob and told him detailedly what she had heard, telling him with determination, "Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I command thee." She asked him specifically that he bring 2 tender kids and good from the flock to prepare a tasty stew, exactly as Isaac liked, imitating perfectly the flavor of the hunt that Esau used to bring. Jacob worried deeply about the risky plan, telling his mother with evident anxiety, "Behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. My father peradventure will feel me, and I shall seem to him as a deceiver, and I shall bring a curse upon me and not a blessing." His fear was completely justified, because he knew the terrible consequences of being discovered in such a deception. But Rebekah decided to carry forward her plan, took all the responsibility upon herself, saying with maternal firmness, "My son, upon me be thy curse. Only obey my voice and go fetch me them." And Rebekah took carefully the most precious clothes of Esau, those that he kept at home and that preserved his characteristic aroma, and put them on Jacob so that he would smell like his older brother. She covered meticulously his smooth hands and the smooth part of his neck with the soft skins of the kids to simulate perfectly the natural hairiness of Esau. When Jacob presented himself nervously before his elderly father with the stew prepared, Isaac suspected immediately because he had arrived too fast for having gone to hunt. Isaac asked him with strangeness, "Who art thou, my son?" Jacob lied directly, without hesitation. "I am Esau, thy firstborn. I have done according as thou badest me. Arise, I pray thee, sit and eat of my venison, that thy soul may bless me." Isaac continued doubting deeply, because he recognized that the voice was clearly that of Jacob. But upon feeling his hands, he felt that they were hairy like those of Esau. The confusion of the elderly patriarch was evident while he struggled between his contradictory senses. Finally, after eating and drinking of the stew that Jacob had brought, Isaac proceeded to bless Jacob with the solemn words originally destined for Esau, according to Genesis 27:28-29. "Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven, and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of corn and wine. Let people serve thee, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be everyone that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee." Little after that, Jacob left hurriedly. Esau arrived with his recently obtained hunt, hoping to receive the promised blessing. When Isaac realized completely the elaborate deception, he trembled violently with a terrible commotion. But the blessing had already been pronounced solemnly and could not be reversed, according to the sacred customs. Esau wept bitterly with great cry and begged desperately for some blessing. But Isaac only could prophesy that he would live by his sword and serve his brother, although eventually he would liberate himself from his yoke. The intense hatred of Esau towards Jacob grew dangerously after the deception of the stolen blessing. In his vengeful heart, he said with determination, "The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob." Rebekah found out secretly about the homicidal intentions of Esau and told Jacob urgently to flee immediately to Haran, to the house of Laban, her brother, and remain there until the destructive anger of Esau calmed completely. Isaac called solemnly Jacob, blessed him again, and commanded him with paternal authority according to Genesis 28. "Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padanaram, to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother." He gave him specifically the blessing of Abraham, so that he would possess the land in which he lived as a stranger, confirming thus the continuity of the divine covenant through his lineage. Jacob departed obediently from Beersheba and undertook the long road toward Haran, carrying with him only the essential for the journey. Upon arriving at a certain place whose name he still did not know, he decided to spend there the night because the sun had already set completely and the darkness made dangerous to continue the journey. He took one of the common stones of the place, accommodated it carefully as an improvised headrest, and went to sleep in that solitary site under the stars. During the night, Jacob had an extraordinary and supernatural dream that would mark forever his spiritual life. He saw clearly a gigantic ladder that was firmly supported on earth, and its upper end touched majestically the sky, connecting in a visible way the two worlds. The beautiful angels of God ascended and descended continuously by it in a constant celestial procession, carrying out divine missions between heaven and earth. And in the high of the ladder was the same Lord, who spoke to him directly with words that would resonate through the generations. According to Genesis 28:13-15, I am Jehovah, the God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And behold, I am with thee and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land. For I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. Jacob awoke completely filled with fear, reverent and divine astonishment, exclaiming with broken voice, Surely Jehovah is in this holy place, and I knew it not. Shaktiyo, the presence of God, had transformed that common place into sacred territory. He called the place Bethel, which means literally house of God, and made a solemn and conditional vow that if God accompanied him faithfully and protected him in his dangerous journey, and gave him bread to eat and clothing to cover himself, and made him return in peace to his father's house, then Jehovah would be his personal God forever. And of the stone that he had put for a sign, he would make house of God. Jacob continued his arduous journey until arriving finally at the land of the children of the east after many days of road. There he found providentially a large well in the field, where 3 flocks of sheep were lying patiently, waiting that the great circular stone that covered the mouth of the well was removed according to the local custom. He asked courteously to the shepherds if they knew Laban, grandson of Nahor, and they told him that yes, they knew him well, and that precisely his daughter Rachel came in that moment with the sheep of her father. When Jacob saw for the first time Rachel, daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, he felt immediately attracted by her beauty and approached with determination. He removed the heavy stone from the mouth of the well, he alone, demonstrating an extraordinary strength, motivated by the desire to impress the young woman. He gave abundant water to drink to the flock of Laban, and then kissed tenderly Rachel and wept in high voice of emotion, telling her that he was a close relative of her father and son of Rebekah, his sister. Laban received Jacob with great joy and genuine hospitality, telling him affectionately, Surely thou art my bone and my flesh. Jacob stayed with him a complete month, helping in the labors of the field and knowing the customs of the house. Then Laban, being a just man, said to him, Because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wages be? Jacob, who had fallen in love deeply with Rachel during that month of living together, answered him without excitement, according to Genesis 29:18. I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. 7 years of service seemed like few days to Jacob, because he loved her intensely, and each day of work brought him closer to his objective of marrying her. When the agreed term was fulfilled exactly, Jacob asked formally Laban to give him his promised wife, because he had fulfilled faithfully his part of the deal. Laban organized a great wedding banquet with all the accustomed pomp, but at night, taking advantage of the darkness and probably the effect of the wine, he brought secretly Leah, his eldest daughter, and gave her as wife to Jacob. The deceived only realized the exchange in the following morning, when the light of the day revealed the true identity of his wife. Jacob claimed indignantly to Laban for the perpetrated deception, who answered him with apparent cultural justification. "What, it must not be so done in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me, yet 7 other years." Jacob, desperate to obtain Rachel, accepted the conditions and also received Rachel as wife a week later, but committing himself to work another 7 additional years. From the beginning, he loved Rachel much more than Leah, creating a painful situation in the home, seeing the compassionate Lord that Leah was constantly disparaged and lived in constant emotional pain. He opened mercifully her womb, but Rachel remained barren as a divine test. Leah conceived rapidly and gave birth to 4 consecutive children: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Each name that she put them reflected desperately her hope of winning, finally, the exclusive love of her husband through maternity. Rachel, desperate for not having children and consumed by envy, gave her personal maid Bilhah to Jacob as concubine, who had 2 children with her, Dan and Naphtali. Leah, not wanting to be surpassed in the competition for descendants, also gave her maid Zilpah to Jacob, who had 2 more children, Gad and Asher. Subsequently, Leah returned to conceive by divine intervention and had 2 more children, Issachar and Zebulun, besides a daughter called Dinah. Finally, after years of sterility and suffering, God remembered mercifully Rachel, opened her womb, and she conceived Joseph, exclaiming with joy, "God hath taken away my reproach," for she had become a mother at last. After 20 long years in the house of Laban, fulfilling faithfully all his work commitments, Jacob felt that it was time definitive to return to his native land. He had served 14 years for his 2 wives and 6 additional years for cattle, accumulating considerable wealth. God spoke to him clearly, telling him, "Yea, return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee to protect thee." Jacob called Rachel and Leah to the field, far from indiscreet ears, and explained to them detailedly that their father had changed unjustly his wages 10 times during those years, but God had not allowed that he do him real harm. Without saying absolutely nothing to Laban to avoid confrontations, Jacob departed secretly with all his possessions, family and cattle. Taking advantage that Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Laban pursued them tenaciously during 7 days until reaching them in the Mount of Gilead. But God appeared to him in dreams during the night and warned him severely that he say to Jacob nothing good or bad, protecting him thus from any vengeance. After mutual claims and tense explanations, they made a solemn covenant with witnesses and separated finally in relative peace. While Jacob continued his journey of return with growing expectation, there came to meet him unexpectedly angels resplendent of God in a celestial manifestation. Upon seeing them clearly, he exclaimed with astonishment, "This is God's host." And he called the name of that memorable place Mahanaim, which means 2 camps, recognizing the simultaneous presence of the earthly and celestial camp. Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, with a message carefully drafted of humility and conciliation, hoping to appease any persistent resentment. The messengers returned rapidly with alarming news, saying, "We came to thy brother Esau, and also he cometh to meet thee, and 400 men with him." Jacob was filled with terror, thinking immediately that Esau came with hostile intentions to avenge finally the deception of decades ago. He divided strategically his people in two separate camps, thinking that if Esau attacked one violently, the other could escape alive. Then he prayed fervently to God with genuine humility, reminding him specifically of his past promises and asking for urgent liberation from the hand of his brother. He prepared an extraordinarily expensive gift for Esau, hoping to appease his anger. 200 goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milch camels with their colts, 40 kine, 10 bulls, 20 she-asses and 10 foals. That crucial night, Jacob made pass carefully all his family to the other side of the river Jabbok, remaining completely alone on the opposite side to face what would come. Then something completely supernatural happened. A mysterious man wrestled physically with him from the setting of the sun until the dawning in a contest that would change his identity forever. When the man saw that he could not overcome him in the struggle, he touched supernaturally the hollow of his thigh, and the thigh of Jacob was out of joint while he wrestled. The man said to him, "Let me go, for the day breaketh." But Jacob, recognizing the divine nature of his opponent, answered with determination according to Genesis 32:26, "I will not let thee go, except thou bless me." The man asked his name, and when Jacob told him, he answered with words that would resonate through history. "Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed." Jacob remained permanently lame of his hip as a physical reminder of that encounter. But he had received a new divine name and a completely transformed identity. He was no longer Jacob the deceiver, but Israel, he who wrestled with God and prevailed. On the next decisive day, Jacob saw afar Esau, who came determinedly with 400 armed men. He divided strategically the children between Leah, Rachel, and the two maids, putting the maids and their children in front as first line, then Leah with her children, and finally Rachel with Joseph in the most secure position. He himself passed bravely before all of them and bowed himself 7 times to the ground, according to the Oriental custom, until arriving near his brother, demonstrating respect and mission. But against all the terrible expectations, Esau ran emotionally to meet him and embraced him effusively. He fell on his neck and kissed him with tears, and they wept both intensely. The reconciliation was complete, emotional, and supernatural. Esau asked with genuine curiosity for all the family, and Jacob presented them formally. Then Esau asked for all the cattle that he had found on the road, and Jacob answered him humbly, according to Genesis 33:8, "And I find grace in the sight of my Lord." Esau initially rejected the gifts generously, saying with magnanimity, "I have enough, my brother. Keep that thou hast unto thyself." But Jacob insisted fervently, telling him, "Take, I pray thee, my present that is brought to thee, because God hath dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." And he urged him insistently until Esau accepted finally the presents as a gesture of definitive reconciliation. The brothers separated again after the emotional meeting, but now in complete peace and mutual forgiveness. Jacob continued his journey and arrived in Succoth, where he built permanent house for himself and adequate cabins for his numerous cattle. After arriving surely in Sichem in the land of Canaan and camped before the city, he bought a considerable part of the field where he planted his tent for 100 pieces of money from the hand of the sons of Hamor, father of Sichem, establishing himself legally in the promised land. In Sichem occurred the devastating tragedy with Dinah, his only daughter, who was dishonored violently by Sichem, son of Hamor the Hivite. prince of that land. The brothers of Dinah, especially Simeon and Levi, avenged brutally the insult, killing in cold blood all the males of the city while they recovered from the circumcision. Jacob rebuked them severely for having put in grave danger all the family with their disproportionate vengeance. God ordered directly Jacob to go up to Bethel and dwell there permanently, returning to the place where he had had the vision of the ladder decades before. Jacob commanded all his family that they remove completely the strange gods that were among them, purify themselves ceremonially and change their clothes. He buried meticulously all the foreign idols under an oak that was next to Shechem, marking a definitive rupture with idolatry in sacred Bethel. God appeared again to Jacob and confirmed solemnly his new name. Israel renewed to him the eternal promises of the covenant, telling him that of him would come a nation and set of nations, and that kings would come out of his loins. The land that he had given to Abraham and Isaac, he would give it to him and to his descendants forever. They departed from Bethel, and when still lacked like half a league of land to arrive at Ephrath, Rachel gave birth with great difficulty her second son. The midwife told her consolingly, "Fear not, thou shalt have this son also." But Rachel died tragically in the childbirth, and while she died, she called the child Benoni, which means son of my sorrow. But Jacob called him Benjamin, son of the right hand, transforming the pain into hope. Isaac died finally, being of age of 180 years, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him together in harmony. Esau went definitively to another land, separating from Jacob his brother, because the goods of both were many, and the land where they lived could not sustain them because of their numerous cattle. Thus dwelt Esau permanently in Mount Seir, and Esau is Edom, Joseph. He was 17 years old when he began to shepherd the sheep together with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, the wives of his father. But Joseph was different from his older brothers, and this difference soon would become evident in ways that would change the destiny of all the family. Jacob loved Joseph more than all his other children, because he was the son of his old age and the first that he had had with Rachel, his beloved wife. This paternal preference manifested itself in a visible way when Jacob made him a coat of many colors, a special garment that distinguished him clearly from his brothers. When the brothers saw that their father loved more Joseph than all of them, according to Genesis 37:4, they hated him and could not speak to him peaceably. The paternal favoritism had created a deep division in the family, and the resentment grew day after day. Joseph, without realizing the danger that this represented, worsened the situation, telling his father the bad reports that he heard about the behavior of his brothers when they shepherded together. One day, Joseph had a dream that moved him so much that he could not keep it for himself. He told it immediately to his brothers, without imagining the consequences of his words. He said to them with innocence, according to Genesis 37:6-7, "Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about and made obeisance to my sheaf." His brothers understood perfectly the meaning of that dream. Joseph was prophesying that someday they would bow before him. The reaction of the brothers was immediate and furious. They answered him with indignation, "Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us?" And from that moment, they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words. But Joseph, without learning the lesson, had another dream even more provocative. This time he dreamed that the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed before him. When he told it to his father and his brothers, even Jacob rebuked him, telling him, "See, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth?" Although Jacob rebuked Joseph publicly, Genesis 37:11 tells us that his brothers envied him, but his father observed the saying. The dreams had sowed a seed of hatred in the heart of the brothers, but also had planted an expectation in the mind of Jacob, who recognized that these dreams could have divine origin. One day, the brothers of Joseph went to pasture the sheep of their father in Shechem, a place distant from the family home. Jacob, worried for his children and for the flock, sent Joseph so that he would go to see how were his brothers and the sheep, and brought him news of them. Joseph obeyed immediately and undertook the journey, carrying on his coat of colors that distinguished him as the favorite son of the patriarch. When Joseph arrived in Shechem, he did not find his brothers in the expected place. A man found him lost in the field and asked him what he sought. Joseph answered him that he sought his brothers and their flocks. The man informed him that they had departed toward Dothan. So Joseph continued his search until arriving at that place. Without knowing it, he was heading toward his destiny. When the brothers saw Joseph from afar, they recognized immediately his distinctive coat. Before that, he approached enough to listen to them. They began to conspire against him. According to Genesis 37:19-20, they said one to another, "Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams." Reuben, the eldest brother, heard the homicidal plan and tried to save him. He did not oppose directly for fear of his brothers, but suggested an alternative that seemed reasonable to them. Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him. His secret intention was to rescue Joseph later and return him safe and sound to his father, but the events would develop in a different way to his plans. When Joseph arrived where his brothers were, they acted rapidly. They took off his coat of colors, the visible symbol of the paternal favor that irritated them so much, and threw him into an empty and dry pit. Then they sat down calmly to eat, ignoring the desperate cries of Joseph, who asked for help from the bottom of the well. His coldness was chilling. They could eat while their younger brother suffered a few meters of distance. While they ate, they saw approaching a company of Ishmaelite merchants that came from Gilead, with their camels loaded with spices, balm and myrrh, heading toward Egypt to trade. Judah, seeing an opportunity, proposed to his brothers. According to Genesis 37:26-27, "What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him. For he is our brother and our flesh." The proposal of Judah was accepted immediately. They took Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelite merchants. Joseph was taken toward Egypt as a slave, while his brothers contemplated how the caravan moved away that took forever the favorite son of their father. The price paid for Joseph was the same that was paid for a young and healthy slave in those times. When Reuben returned to the pit with the intention of rescuing Joseph, he discovered that it was empty. He tore his clothes in sign of pain and desperation and ran toward his brothers, shouting, "The child is not, and I, whither shall I go?" The brothers had to tell him what they had done, and now needed a plan to deceive their father. They took the coat of Joseph, killed a kid of the flock, and dyed the coat with the blood of the animal. They brought the bloody coat to Jacob and told him with feigned concern, "This have we found. Know now whether it be thy son's coat or no." Jacob recognized immediately the coat and exclaimed with heartbreaking pain, "Oh, it is my son's coat. An evil beast hath devoured him." Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son during many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, according to Genesis 37:35, For I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning." While Jacob wept the supposed death of Joseph, the Midianite merchants sold the young man in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Joseph arrived in Egypt as a slave, but from the first moment demonstrated being different from the other servants. Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh who had bought him, soon realized that there was something special in this Hebrew young man. Genesis 39:2 tells us that Jehovah was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Everything that Joseph touched prospered in an extraordinary way, and this prosperity did not go unnoticed for his master. Potiphar observed carefully Joseph and noted that the Lord was with him, and that everything that he did, Jehovah made it prosper in his hand. This observation led Potiphar to take a decision that would change completely the position of Joseph in his house. According to Genesis 39:4, Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had, he put into his hand. With Joseph as administrator, the house of Potiphar experienced a blessing without precedence. From the day that he put Joseph over his house and over all that he had, Jehovah blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was upon everything that he had, as much in house as in the field. Potiphar trusted so much in Joseph that he did not worry about anything of what he had, except for the bread which he did eat. Joseph managed absolutely everything with such efficiency that his master could dedicate himself completely to other affairs. Joseph was beautiful of face and of appearance, and his privileged position in the house did not go unnoticed for the wife of Potiphar. This woman began to put her eyes on Joseph with dishonest intentions. One day, taking advantage that they were alone in the house, she spoke to him directly according to Genesis 39:7, "Lie with me." The proposal was clear and direct, but Joseph rejected the invitation immediately. Joseph explained to the woman the reasons of his refusal with words that revealed his integrity and his fear of God. He said to her, according to Genesis 39:8-9, "Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I. Neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Despite the clear refusal of Joseph, the wife of Potiphar did not get discouraged. Day after day she insisted in her indecent proposal, but Joseph remained firm in his refusal. Not only he rejected her insinuations, but he avoided being alone with her, and tried not to be where she was, to not give place to the temptation. His constant resistance only increased the determination of the woman to get what she wanted. One day, it came to pass that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. The wife of Potiphar saw the perfect opportunity and caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But Joseph, to escape the compromising situation, left his garment in her hands and went out fleeing from the house. The woman remained with the physical evidence that she needed to execute her vengeance. When the wife of Potiphar saw herself mocked and rejected publicly, her passion turned into vengeful anger. She kept the garment of Joseph by her until his lord came home, and then she lied shamelessly to him, according to Genesis 39:17-18. "The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me, and it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out." The accusation was exactly the opposite to what had occurred in reality. When Potiphar listened to the words of his wife and saw the garment of Joseph as apparent evidence, his fury was ignited. Without investigating more nor listening to the version of Joseph, he took his servant and put him in the prison, where the king's prisoners were bound. Joseph passed in a single day from being the administrator of trust of a prosperous house to being a prisoner accused of a crime that he had not committed. The injustice was evident, But Joseph would have to trust that God had a plan even in the middle of this adversity. Although Joseph was in prison unjustly, it did not take long to demonstrate the same qualities that had distinguished him. In the house of Potiphar, Genesis 39:21 tells us that Jehovah was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. The principal jailer recognized rapidly the exceptional abilities of Joseph and decided to take advantage of them. The chief of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because Jehovah was with him, and that which he did, Jehovah made it to prosper. During this time it came to pass that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers and put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. The captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. So Joseph had direct contact with these important prisoners. After being some time in the prison, both officers, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, dreamed two dreams in one night, each one his own dream, with his own interpretation. When Joseph saw them in the morning, he noted that they were sad and worried. He asked them with genuine concern, according to Genesis 47, Wherefore look ye so sadly today?" The two men answered him, "We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it." Now Joseph answered them with confidence in God, according to Genesis 48, "I do not interpretations belong to God. Tell me them, I pray you." This answer revealed the faith of Joseph, that God could reveal him the meaning of the dreams, just as he had done with his own dreams before. The chief butler told his dream first. "In my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand." Joseph interpreted the dream immediately, according to Genesis 40:12-14. This is the interpretation of it. "The 3 branches are 3 days, yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head, and restore thee unto thy place. And thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the former manner when thou wast his butler." The interpretation was favorable. The butler would be restored to his previous position. Taking advantage of the positive interpretation, Joseph asked the butler to remember him when he was restored. He said to him, according to Genesis 40:14-15, "But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed, I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation had been good for the butler, he was encouraged to tell also his dream. He said to Joseph, "I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there was of all manner of bakemeats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head." Joseph had to give an interpretation much less favorable. He answered according to Genesis 40:18-19, "This is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days, yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off thee." The difference between the 2 interpretations was dramatic. Restoration for one, death for the other, on the 3rd day, which was the day of Pharaoh's birthday. He made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief butler unto his butlership again, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. However, The chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him completely, despite having been benefited by the exact interpretation of Joseph and having promised implicitly to help him once that he recovered his privileged position in the court. Joseph disappeared from his memory. This ingratitude would prolong the stay of Joseph in the prison, but also would be part of the perfect time of God for the future plans in the prison, apparently forgotten by all, except by God. Then it came to pass that Pharaoh had two disturbing dreams in one night that left him deeply uneasy. In the first dream, according to Genesis 41:2-4, out of the river came up 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow, and behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river, and the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. After this first unsettling dream, Pharaoh awoke, but managed to go back to sleep. Then he had a second, equally strange dream. He dreamed that 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good, and behold, 7 thin ears and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them, and the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. Pharaoh awoke definitively, and behold, it was a dream, but his spirit was troubled deeply. In the morning, Pharaoh was so perturbed by these dreams that he sent to call all the magicians of Egypt and all his wise men. He told them his dreams, but none of them could interpret them satisfactorily. The Egyptian wisdom, famous in all the ancient world, showed itself completely impotent before these divine dreams. Pharaoh found himself in a desperate situation. He had had dreams that clearly had meaning, but no one in all his kingdom could explain them to him. It was then when the chief butler, upon seeing the anguish of Pharaoh, remembered suddenly Joseph. According to Genesis 41:9-11, he said to Pharaoh, "I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker, and we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, an Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored unto mine office, and him he hanged." Immediately Pharaoh sent and called Joseph. They took him hurriedly from the prison, shaved him, changed his prison clothes, and took him before Pharaoh. The moment that Joseph had been waiting for during years finally had arrived, although in a way that he never could have imagined. From prisoner unjustly incarcerated to royal consultant in a matter of hours, Pharaoh said to Joseph directly, "I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it." Joseph answered Pharaoh with humility and faith, according to Genesis 41:16. "It is not in me, God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace." Joseph did not attribute to himself any supernatural power, but gave all the glory to God from the first moment. Pharaoh proceeded to tell Joseph both dreams with all detail. After listening attentively, Joseph answered him with a clear and direct interpretation according to Genesis 41:25-27. The dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears, blasted with the east wind, shall be 7 years of famine. Joseph explained that 7 years of great abundance would come in all the land of Egypt, followed immediately by 7 years of severe famine that would make forget all the previous abundance. The famine would be so intense that it would consume the land, and the previous abundance would not be known in the land because of the famine that would come after, for it would be very grievous. The repetition of the dream in two different forms meant that the thing was firmly decided by God, and that God would hurry to do it. After interpreting the dreams, Joseph did not limit himself to explain their meaning, but dared to offer a practical plan to face the coming crisis. He proposed to Pharaoh according to Genesis 41:33-36. Now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. The proposal of Joseph was revolutionary, to create a national system of storage that would allow Egypt not only to survive the famine, but to prosper during it. The plan included the designation of a supreme administrator, the establishment of regional governors, the implementation of a tax of 20% on all the agricultural production during the years of abundance, and the construction of warehouses strategically located to conserve the grain. The counsel seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his servants. Pharaoh recognized immediately that Joseph was the ideal person to implement this plan. According to Genesis 41:38-39, he said to his servants, "Can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is?" And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, "Forasmuch as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art." When in a decision that would change forever the destiny of Joseph and of all the region. Pharaoh said to him, according to Genesis 41:40-41, "Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou." And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, "See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt." From prisoner unjustly incarcerated, Joseph passed to be the second most powerful man of the richest nation of the known world. Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it in the hand of Joseph. He dressed him in garments of fine linen. He put a gold chain about his neck and made him ride in his second chariot. They proclaimed before him, "Bow the knee," and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also gave him an Egyptian name, Zaphnath-Paneah, and gave him as wife Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, integrating him completely into the Egyptian society. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. 13 years had passed since he was sold as slave by his brothers, probably 10 years in the house of Potiphar and 3 years in the prison. Now began a new stage of his life, not as victim of the circumstances, but as architect of the future of a nation. Joseph went out from before Pharaoh and traveled all the land of Egypt, organizing the system of collection and storage that he had proposed. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced abundantly. Joseph gathered all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. The food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number. The system worked perfectly. Egypt became the largest granary of the world, prepared to face not only its own crisis, but to feed the neighboring nations, which also would suffer the coming famine during these prosperous years. Before the first year of famine arrived, were born to Joseph 2 children of Asenath. To the firstborn he called the name Manasseh, saying, "For God hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house." To the second he called the name Ephraim, saying, "For God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction." The names of his children reflected how Joseph had processed emotionally his painful past and his blessed present. When the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended, the 7 years of dearth began to come, just as Joseph had predicted. There was dearth in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you, do. Joseph had become the savior of Egypt, and soon would be of many other nations. The famine spread throughout all the land, and when it became worse, Joseph opened all the storehouses where he had stored the wheat during the years of abundance and sold to the Egyptians. Besides, from all countries they came to Egypt to buy from Joseph, because throughout all the land the famine had grown. The wisdom and foresight of Joseph had turned Egypt into the only place where food could be obtained. Jacob, from the land of Canaan, found out that in Egypt there was wheat available for sale. He gathered his children and said to them according to Genesis 42:1-2, Why do ye look one upon another? Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. The situation was desperate. Without wheat from Egypt, all the family of Jacob would die of hunger. The 10 brothers of Joseph descended to buy wheat in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, brother of Joseph, with his other brothers, because he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him. Jacob had lost Joseph years ago, and was not willing to risk also Benjamin, the other son of his beloved Rachel. The absence of Benjamin would be a crucial factor in the events that would follow. Joseph was the Lord of the land, he that sold to all the people of the land. When the brothers of Joseph arrived, they bowed themselves before him, with their faces to the earth, fulfilling, without knowing it, the first dream that Joseph had had 20 years ago. Joseph recognized immediately his brothers, but they did not recognize him. So much time had passed. Joseph had changed physically. He dressed like a noble Egyptian, spoke Egyptian, and had all the appearance of a high official of the court. Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed concerning them in his youth, but decided not to reveal himself yet. Instead, he spoke to them roughly according to Genesis 42:9. Ye are spies. To see the nakedness of the land ye are come. The accusation was serious. In times of famine, the national security was crucial, and the spies could represent a real threat for Egypt. The brothers defended themselves immediately. Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's sons. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies. But Joseph insisted in his accusation and repeated, Ye are spies. To see the nakedness of the land ye are come. To prove their innocence, the brothers told him their family history according to Genesis 42:13. Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. This information was exactly what Joseph needed to know. His father still lived. Benjamin was with him, and his brothers believed that Joseph had died. Joseph proposed to them a test to verify if they told the truth, according to Genesis 42:15-16. Hereby ye shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. Send one of you and let him fetch your brother, and ye shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved. Whether there be any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh surely ye are spies. He put them in the prison for 3 days, giving them time to reflect on their situation. On the 3rd day, Joseph made them a modified proposal. He said to them according to Genesis 42:18-20, This do and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, Carry corn for the famine of your houses, but bring your youngest brother unto me. So shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die." The brothers began to speak among themselves in Hebrew, without knowing that Joseph could understand them perfectly. According to Genesis 42:21-22, they said, We are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child, and ye would not hear. Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. Joseph turned himself about from them and wept upon hearing these words. His brothers finally recognized their guilt and showed genuine remorse for what they had done to him. However, it was not yet the moment to reveal himself. He returned to them and took Simeon from among them and bound him before their eyes as a guarantee that they would return with Benjamin. After, Joseph ordered that they fill their sacks with wheat and that they return the money of each one of them, putting it in their sack, and that they give them food for the way. And thus was it done unto them. But Joseph had added a surprise. Secretly, he ordered that the money that they had paid for the wheat was returned, placing it in the mouth of each sack. When they arrived at an inn in the return journey, one of them opened his sack to give provender to his ass, and saw his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. He said to his brothers, according to Genesis 42:28, My money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, What is this that God hath done unto us? When they arrived to Jacob, their father in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. They said, The man, the Lord of the land, spake roughly to us and took us for spies of the country. And we said unto him, We are true men. We are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. When they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. Upon seeing them bundled of money, as much they as their father had fear. Jacob said to them with anguish, according to Genesis 42:36, Me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and ye will take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. Reuben tried to convince his father, telling him, Slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him to thee again. But Jacob refused rotundly, according to Genesis 42:38. My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in the which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. The famine continued being severe in the land. And when they had eaten up the corn which they had brought out of Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, Go again, buy us a little food. But Judah answered him, according to Genesis 43:3-5, that man did solemnly protest unto us, saying, Ye shall not see my face except your brother be with you. If thou wilt send our brother with us, we will go down and buy thee food. But if thou wilt not send him, we will not go down. For the man said unto us, Ye shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. Jacob lamented, Wherefore dealt ye so ill with me as to tell the man whether ye had yet a brother? They answered, The man asked us straitly of our state and of our kindred, saying, Is your father yet alive? Have ye another brother? And we told him according to the tenor of these words. Could we certainly know that he would say, Bring your brother down? Judah finally convinced his father with a proposal that could not be rejected. According to Genesis 43:8-10, he said to him, Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go. that we may live and not die, both we and thou and also our little ones. I will be surety for him. Of my hand shalt thou require him. If I bring him not unto thee and set him before thee, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not lingered, surely now we had returned this second time. Jacob finally yielded, but not without taking precautions. He said to them according to Genesis 43:11-13, "If it must be so now, do this. Take of the best fruits in the land in your vessels and carry down the man a present, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, nuts and almonds, and take double money in your hand, and the money that was brought again in the mouth of your sacks. Carry it again in your hand. Peradventure it was an oversight. Take also your brother and arise. Go again unto the man, and God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may send away your other brother and Benjamin. If I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved." The brothers took that present, took in their hand double money and Benjamin, and rose up and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the ruler of his house, "Bring these men home and slay and make ready, for these men shall dine with me at noon." The brothers were frightened when they were brought to Joseph's house, because they thought that it was because of the money that had been returned in their sacks the first time. They feared that they were accused of theft and were made slaves. They spoke with the steward of his house, explaining to him about the money. But he calmed them, saying, "Peace be to you. Fear not. Your God and the God of your father hath given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money, and he brought Simeon out unto them." When Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand, and bowed themselves to him to the earth. He asked them how they were, and said, "Is your father well, the old man of whom ye spake? Is he yet alive?" They answered, "Thy servant our father is in good health. He is yet alive." And they bowed down their heads and made obeisance. Joseph lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Bunny, is this your younger brother of whom ye spake unto me?" And he said, "God be gracious unto thee, my son." And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep, and he entered into his chamber, and wept there. And he washed his face and went out, and refrained himself, and said, "Set on bread." During the meal, Joseph made sit his brothers before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. The men looked astonished one to another, wondering how this stranger knew so exactly the order of their ages. Joseph made them be served from his own table, but the portion of Benjamin was 5 times greater than the portions of all of them. The next day, Joseph commanded the steward of his house according to Genesis 44:1-2, "Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put every man's money in his sack's mouth, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack's mouth of the youngest, and his corn money." The steward did as Joseph had commanded him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away, they and their asses. And when they were gone out of the city and not yet far off, Joseph said unto his steward, "Up, follow after the men, and when thou dost overtake them, say unto them, Wherefore have ye rewarded evil for good? Is not this it in which my Lord drinketh, and whereby indeed he divineth? Ye have done evil in so doing." When the steward overtook them, he repeated to them these words. They answered him indignantly, "Wherefore saith my Lord these words? God forbid that thy servants should do according to this thing. Behold, the money which we found in our sacks' mouths, we brought again unto thee out of the land of Canaan. How then should we steal out of thy Lord's house silver or gold?" The brothers were so sure of their innocence that they made a rash declaration according to Genesis 44:9. "With whomsoever of thy servants it be found, both let him die, and we also will be my lord's bondmen." The steward accepted to search, but modified the consequences. "Now also let it be according unto your words. He with whom it is found shall be my servant, and ye shall be blameless." Then they speedily took down every man his sack to the ground, and opened every man his sack. The steward searched, and began at the eldest, and left at the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes and laded every man his ass, and returned to the city completely devastated. Judah and his brethren came to Joseph's house, for he was yet there, and they fell before him on the ground. Joseph said unto them, "What deed is this that ye have done? Wot ye not that such a man as I can certainly divine?" Judah answered according to Genesis 44:16, "To what shall we say unto my Lord? What shall we speak, or how shall we clear ourselves? God hath found out the iniquity of thy servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also with whom the cup is found." But Joseph answered, "God forbid that I should do so. But the man in whose hand the cup is found, he shall be my servant, and as for you, get you up in peace unto your father." This answer led Judah to make the most emotional plea of all the Bible. He approached Joseph and begged him to listen to his words, telling him all the story of Jacob, his love for Benjamin, and how he would die if the young man did not return. Judah concluded his plea according to Genesis 44:33-34. "Now therefore, I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the lad a bondman to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren. For how shall I go up to my father, and the lad be not with me? Lest peradventure I see the evil that shall come on my father." In that moment, Joseph could not refrain himself any more before all them that stood by him, and he cried, "Because every man to go out from me." And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. Then Joseph made himself known unto his brethren, according to Genesis 45:3. "I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live?" And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. Joseph said unto his brethren, "Come near to me, I pray you." And they came near, and he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life." Joseph had forgiven completely his brothers, and saw the hand of God in everything that had happened. After Joseph revealed himself to his brothers, the impact of his words left them dumb with terror and confusion. They could not believe that the powerful governor of Egypt was their younger brother, the one whom they had sold as slave 22 years ago. Joseph, seeing their trouble, spoke to them with gentle voice according to Genesis 45:4. "Come near to me, I pray you." And they came near, and he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life." Joseph explained to his brothers that God had used their evil actions for a greater purpose during the 2 years that the famine had lasted. There were yet 5 years more without plowing nor reaping. God had sent him before them to preserve them a posterity in the earth, and to save their lives by a great deliverance. According to Genesis 45:8, Joseph said to them, "So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God, and he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt." Joseph embraced Benjamin his brother and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brethren and wept upon them. And after that, his brethren talked with him without fear. The news that the brothers of Joseph had arrived reached the house of Pharaoh, and it pleased Pharaoh well and his servants. Pharaoh, knowing the importance of Joseph for Egypt, told him to bring all his family. According to Genesis 45:17-18, he ordered, "Say unto thy brethren, This do ye, lade your beasts and go. Get you unto the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households, and come unto me, and I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and ye shall eat the fat of the land. Shatitapor. Pharaoh also provided them with wagons from Egypt to transport their children and wives, and commanded them not to worry for their stuff, because the good of all the land of Egypt would be theirs. Joseph sent his brothers with abundant provisions for the road, and gave them changes of raiment. To Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of raiment for his father. Joseph sent 10 asses laden with the good things of Egypt, and 10 she-asses laden with corn and bread and meat for his father by the way. When he dismissed his brothers, he said to them according to Genesis 45:24, "See that ye fall not out by the way." When the brothers arrived to Jacob in Canaan, they gave him the incredible news. Joseph is yet alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. The heart of Jacob fainted, for he believed them not. But when they told him all the words of Joseph which he had said unto them, and when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. Jacob took the decision to go to Egypt, but first made sacrifices in Beersheba to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to him in visions of night according to Genesis 46:3-4. "I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. I will go down with thee into Egypt, and I will also surely bring thee up again, and Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eyes." All the family of Jacob departed toward Egypt in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent. All that went down with Jacob into Egypt were 70 persons. Jacob sent Judah before him unto Joseph to direct his face unto Goshen. When Joseph appeared before his father in Goshen, he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Then Israel said unto Joseph, according to Genesis 46:30, "Now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive." Joseph went and told Pharaoh, saying, "My father and my brethren and their flocks and their herds and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen." He took 5 of his brethren and presented them unto Pharaoh. When Pharaoh asked the brothers about their trade, they answered, "Thy servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers." Pharaoh granted them to dwell in the land of Goshen, and if he knew that there were among them men of activity, he would set them over his cattle. Joseph brought also Jacob his father and presented him before Pharaoh. Jacob blessed Pharaoh. When Pharaoh asked Jacob how many were the days of the years of his life, Jacob answered according to Genesis 47:9, "The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained, unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage." Jacob blessed again Pharaoh, and went out from before Pharaoh. Joseph made dwell his father and his brothers in the best of the land of Egypt, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. When Jacob was 147 years old, the time of his death arrived. He called Joseph and asked him that he put his hand under his thigh, swearing that he would not bury him in Egypt, but that he would take him to the land of his fathers to bury him there. Joseph took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, so that Jacob blessed them before dying. Although the eyes of Israel were so dim for old age that he could not see well, he stretched his hands and put them upon the heads of the youths. Jacob crossed his hands intentionally, putting his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, although he was the younger, and his left upon the head of Manasseh, the firstborn. When Joseph tried to correct his father, Jacob answered according to Genesis 48:19, "I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations." Jacob blessed both youths according to Genesis 48:20. In thee shall Israel bless, saying, God make thee as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Jacob called all his children to bless them before his death. He said to them according to Genesis 49:1, "That gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days." So each blessing revealed the character of each child and the future of his tribe. To Reuben, his firstborn, he told him that he was his might and the beginning of his strength, but that he would not be the principal, because he had gone up to his father's bed. To Simeon and Levi he rebuked them for their anger and violence, declaring that they would be scattered in Israel. To Judah he prophesied greatness, according to Genesis 49:10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. This was a messianic prophecy about the future king that would come from the tribe of Judah. He blessed each one of his 12 children with specific blessings. Zebulun would dwell at the haven of the sea, and Issachar would be a strong ass crouching down between two burdens. Dan would judge his people. Gad would be attacked, but would overcome. Asher would yield royal dainties. Naphtali would be like a hind let loose. Joseph would be a fruitful bough, and Benjamin would be like a wolf that raveneth. After blessing his children, Jacob commanded them according to Genesis 49:29. I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite. He referred to the cave of Machpelah, where were buried Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and where he had buried Leah. When Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed, and yielded up the ghost, and was gathered unto his people. Joseph fell upon his father's face, and wept upon him, and kissed him. Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were fulfilled for him. For so are fulfilled the days of those which are embalmed, and the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. Joseph asked permission to Pharaoh to go up to bury his father in the land of Canaan, as he had sworn. There went up with Joseph all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, and all the house of Joseph and his brethren, and his father's house. It was a very great company, with chariots and horsemen. They came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond Jordan, and there they mourned with a great and very sore lamentation. Joseph made a mourning for his father 7 days. After they carried him into the land of Canaan, and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, as Jacob had commanded. After the burial of Jacob, the brothers of Joseph feared that now that their father had died, Joseph would avenge himself of them. They sent a message saying that Jacob had commanded before dying that Joseph forgive the trespass of his brethren. When Joseph heard this, he wept. His brothers came and fell down before his face, saying, Behold, we be thy servants. But Joseph answered them according to Genesis 50:19-20. Fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, ye thought evil against me. But God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. Joseph lived 110 years. He saw Ephraim's children of the 3rd generation, the children also of Mashir, the son of Manasseh, were brought up upon Joseph's knees. When Joseph was near death, he gathered his brothers and said to them, according to Genesis 50:24-26, Do I die, and God will surely visit you, and bring you out of this land unto the land which he sware to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, See, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. His bones would remain in Egypt until the Israelites went out from there as he had prophesied. We have arrived at the end of this incredible story of Genesis that began with the creation of the universe and ended with a family that would become a great nation. From Adam until Joseph, we have seen how God fulfills his promises through generations, using even the most difficult situations for his eternal purposes. If this journey through the book of Genesis has impacted you as much as to us, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to not miss any episode of this biblical series. Share this video with your family and friends so that they also can know these fascinating stories that have changed the history of humanity. In the comments, tell us which was the story that impacted you the most from Genesis, and what other books of the Bible would you like that we explore together. Your participation helps us to create the content that you really want to see. We see each other in the next.